Gotham Knights has no shortage of awesome things and cool features you'll want to unlock as early as possible. And not just that, also quite a lot of secret abilities that it doesn't even tell you how to get, but they can completely change your character around and likely make them way more powerful than you think. So let's dive right in with all of the details, and if you happen to enjoy this video at any point, a thumbs up on it would be awesome. Now, one of the first things you'll want to unlock with one of your heroes, at the very least your main, is your Knighthood skill tree, which is the fourth one right here. This provides access to each hero's iconic traversal mechanic so that you're not stuck with the bike or the grappling hook. It also gives you access to 6 additional passive skills that can be very strong, and the ultimate ability for that hero marked with this yellow icon in the momentum ability screen. Now, this requires you to complete 3 objectives, the most lengthy of which being the one that requires you to complete 10 premeditated crime events around the city. Unfortunately, you do have to complete these each time for all of the 4 characters, so hopefully that will change in the future, but in the hopes of making your choices easier, here's what I think of each one of them. Personally, most useful I found it to be Nightwing's flying trapeze, as this one is the only one that lets you also fly up. But Barbara's bat glide is the most fun of the bunch by far, especially if you want to play as close as possible to Batman. Red Hood's mystical leap is also pretty fun, but Robin's teleportation has to be by far the most dull out of the bunch. So that's just my opinion, even though Robin is an amazing character, just keep that in mind. But these are not the only ones that open up. As I've said, the hero's ultimate abilities will also open up with the Knighthood skill tree, indicated by the yellow icon in the second row of the momentum abilities. One of their biggest advantages is the fact that unlike all other abilities which cost momentum bar, these do not, as instead they work on a cooldown basis. So I'm going to cover these quickly to compare them in case you want to go with a stronger option or not. And if you want to go with the highest damage, I definitely recommend going with Red Hood first and his mystical rounds. This ultimate is insane as it seems to deal the highest damage, and not just to the primary target, to pretty much a whole group of enemies, while the rest will just run away in fear. You do have to hold down the button to charge it for like a couple of seconds, but once you release it, it deals that huge damage as I've said. You can even further buff it with the Shadow Vengeance and do cross training perks to shoot 2 rounds instead of just 1 and to charge the ability much faster. On the opposite side, I found Nightwing's Nest ultimate to not be that great, but mostly because it fits more of a utility role, granting you and your allies a defense bonus, healing over time, and it also deals damage to any enemy that steps inside of it. It can also be buffed to extend its range and damage, but personally I would not bother as the damage is still pretty low and you're not getting much out of it. I did like Robin's Microbots ultimate that summons 3 swarms by default to deal incendiary damage, and they also cause the enemies to explode at the end of that duration. But upgrades are also pretty nice here. You can upgrade it to summon up to 5 of them instead and also reduce the cooldown. Finally, Barbara's drone kind of fits both a utility and a damage role. The ability calls a drone into combat to aid you in shooting enemies on its own, but it also heals you every now and then for around 30 seconds in its duration. One of its upgrades is pretty wild though. It unleashes a large burst of AoE damage that throws enemies on their backs, but you can also further increase the drone's firing rate too for some extra DPS. With skills out of the way, let's also talk about another unlock I recommend early on, which are the fast travel points. As you start the game, you don't really have them, and it tends to kind of like throw you on pretty much all sides of the map with some of these missions and challenges, and that's why you'll want to unlock these as fast as you can. Now, this mechanic can be accessed quite early by simply doing a mission for Lucius Fox once you get him as one of your contacts. He will unlock the first trial near Belfry that you can quickly complete, as it requires you to hack into a drone to open up that point. And once that's done, the game will reveal all other fast travel points locked around Gotham that you will need to complete in a similar way by finding 1 up to 3 drones to hack into. That's why I said I preferred unlocking Nightwing's glider first, as it makes it easier to reach these vantage points where the drones are located. Be careful that some of them have shields, so you will want to wait until they land so that you can hack into them. And once that is done, you can pretty much select the vantage point to immediately fast travel to it and use your own drone. But let's keep on going and move over to the momentum abilities. These will completely change how you play Gotham Knights. A few of them are also secret, so I will talk about that towards the end of the video, but each hero by default starts with 1 plus 7 more that you can unlock, including that we got from the Knighthood. To see how each hero can unlock them, always consult your challenges menu, which will display exactly how many open world events or enemies you need to defeat before they unlock. And while unlocking them is quite straightforward, I will suggest paying extra attention to a few ones that I found to be just amazing. You pretty much all saw my Nightwing gameplay, so the one ability I recommend if you try to main him is his Whirlwind. This lets him spin around, throwing his sticks, hitting a lot of enemies in an AoE range, and what's great about it is that it inherits whatever elemental effect your main weapons might have. So you can spread them like wildfire on extremely large groups of enemies, cause AoE damage explosions. That's why I also recommend using shock damage early on, maybe even in the end game, as the damage burst also helps you for additional DPS and also to spread it more to nearby targets. But this brings us to the final secret abilities, momentum ones that I simply cannot recommend enough. There's 4 of these in total, 1 per each hero that you can unlock by completing all of the character related cutscenes first for that specific character. So throughout the story, you're going to notice distinctive icons either in the belfry or around the city that usually indicate a special background story for that character that also gives a bit of context about them. Not sure if finishing the game is needed for all of them, so let me know down below in the comments, but if you get all of these cutscenes, eventually you'll unlock the missing momentum ability number 6. These are much stronger and more unique looking compared to your typical skill, but their challenges require you to unlock them by defeating enemies with your ultimate abilities. So in the case of somebody like Barbara, where you just have to use the drones to take down enemies, that can be easier. Meanwhile, for example, Nightwing's nest, which also has a similar requirement, can be a little bit more challenging and yeah, not really worth it. So let's start with Barbara's Bat Swarm, which I found to be so amazing. It's probably her best ability in the entire game. This calls upon a swarm of bats for 15 seconds that will swirl around you, dealing damage to anything that it comes in contact with, while also preventing most attacks from reaching you, like for example, especially from the snipers and other ranged enemies. The damage on these bats is insane, and did I also mention that they bypass all defenses? Like if you fight against an enemy that constantly guards or dodges your attacks, it doesn't really matter, you're going to just bypass all of that. And it also induces massive amounts of fear into all other goons that might have not been yet attacked by this ability, so totally worth getting. Similarly, I also unlocked Robin's Wraith, which is by far the coolest of them all. It triggers a Hollow Wraith on him, making all nearby enemies very afraid of him. It also lasts for 15 seconds and further increases your crit chance and crit damage by another 15%. So it kinda is the perfect setup for him to just unleash his massive damage potential. Meanwhile, Nightwing's was most disappointing, but still useful, kinda, I guess. It's called Bright Night, and it's basically his symbol move, causing a bright flash of light to just stun nearby enemies it gets in touch with. And it also grants 1 momentum bar. It's useful, I guess, because it dazes enemies for a few seconds, meaning they get stunned, but it's not the best of them all. In any case, this is it with all the early unlocks. I heavily encourage you to go ahead and get. Let me know down below if you got any of them from this list, or if you have many more to get. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video at any point, a thumbs up on it would be awesome. And if you really enjoyed it, also don't forget to subscribe and activate that notification bell. Thanks so much for watching again, and I'll see you guys in the next one.